Hi guys, welcome to the merry month of May, and let's see what we've got this month. Funnily enough, when I was beginning to write dispatches for this month, you mull over at the weekend all the different releases we've got, and I was trying to think of something that could connect them. And for some reason, into my head came this old Latin motto, "Per mare per terram." Now, some of you may know, as an ex-Royal Marine, that is the official motto of the Royal Marines, and it means by sea and by land. And obviously, all kinds of organizations and units have Latin mottos. As we know, the American Marine Corps is Semper Fidelis, always faithful. But by sea and by land, which is the Royal Marines motto, kind of expresses what we do as well, or what we have done in the past. And it reflects a little bit what we have right here in front of us for the month of May. Now, there's actually a lot of figures. Well, I think there's almost about 24 figures at least in front of you. No vehicles, no aeroplanes this month, but we've released quite a few of those in the last 4 or 5 months. So we concentrated on the figures this time round. So when it comes to the by sea and by land, well, let's go to the sea aspect of that. And what you'll see here when you look closely, and you'll get the close-ups at the end of the video, is something that we're calling, it's a kind of little sub-series of historical figures, and that we're calling great moments in time. Now, in actual fact, the very first great moment in time we did was when we did the assassination of Julius Caesar. But of course, we decided to put that into our ancient Rome series, and we didn't keep it in this. So the next one that we worked on, and again, I was trying to think of what can we do, great moments in time, little historical vignettes. And in fact, in this case, to some extent, this was suggested by our K&C authorised dealer in London, the Armoury of St James. Now, I don't know how many of you have been to London in the last few years, but the Armoury of St James is virtually the only dedicated toy soldier. Well, it's actually all kinds of historical antiques, lots of military antiques, but they've got a large collection of toy soldiers. Now, a large part of their collection is King Country. And I always like to ask dealers, well, what would you like to see that we haven't done before? And one of the things that the guys there said, well, we always have got naval collectors coming in who are looking for something to do with the Royal Navy in particular. And again, when I thought about that, and I know that over the years we've done some naval figures. Just recently we did Hearts of Oak with the Royal Navy of the 1980s on parade. And we've actually done figures of Lord Nelson before. Now, again, as many of you know, Vice Admiral Lord Horatio Nelson is a hero of Trafalgar. And he's probably Britain's greatest admiral. And the victory that he won at the Battle of Trafalgar really put Britain on top as far as the sea was concerned for the next century, until certainly the First World War. But the Battle of Trafalgar was obviously during the Napoleonic Wars, and that was when Napoleon himself, in the year 1805, had been victorious all over mainland Europe, and he was looking across the English Channel at Britain, and that was going to be his next target. But even Napoleon recognised that to get across the English Channel, in those days anyway, was fairly difficult because of the large presence of the Royal Navy. So he knew that he had to defeat the Royal Navy before he could secure a safe passage for all of his troops from Boulogne, where he was building up his Grande Armée, all the way across the Channel to land on the south coast of England. Anyway, cut a long story short, the French fleet and the Spanish fleet, they were allies at the time, decided to come together to defeat the British fleet. And this came about in a place called Trafalgar, or Cape Trafalgar, which is off the southwest coast of Spain. Now, at that time, the British fleet that was going to be taking on the combined French and Spanish fleets was only about 27 ships of the line. That was mostly the 2 and 3 deck warships. that were the largest sailing ships at that time. Now, the British had 27 in their fleet that was to take on Napoleon. The French and Spanish combined had 33. Anyway, what they decided to do, or the commander of the British fleet was Admiral Lord Nelson. And what he decided to do was a very bold approach where he formed his 27 ships up into two lines, and they were going to charge directly at the French and Spanish ships and split them into three separate sections. Now, obviously, it was very dangerous because he was outnumbered. And the fact of the matter was, in terms of guns and what have you, they had more guns than he had. However, Nelson was a very bold admiral and decided that the best way forward was to get as close to their ships as possible, because he knew that in terms of gunnery, that the British ships, although they had less guns, had trained better and could fire faster than the enemy. So that was the plan. Two columns of ships attacking towards the broadside of the French and Spanish ships. Excuse me. So that's what happened. Now, unfortunately, because of that, the ships get locked together. Excuse me again. And then we had the situation where not only did you have to compete with the cannons on the main gun deck, but you had marksmen that would climb it up to the rigging and up in the mizzen tops of all the masts of the ships. And they would be opening fire on each other's ships at the same time. Now, Nelson was someone that liked to get in the center of every battle. And he was on what they called the quarter deck of HMS Victory. That was his flagship. And his flag captain was a chap called Captain Thomas Hardy, who was also a great friend of Nelson's. Anyway, Nelson was on the quarter deck with Hardy of HMS Victory in the middle of this battle. It was absolute mayhem. There was all kind, and Victory itself had taken a lot of punishment from the French and Spanish ships as it approached, but had still managed to keep its own gunfire in return. So around a couple of hours into the battle, about 1:15 in the afternoon, suddenly Nelson fell to the deck. And what had happened was a French marksman on a ship called the Redoutable, which was one of the main French ships, had seen Nelson on the deck. And Nelson was actually fairly easy to see because he always liked to wear all of his medals. So when you saw this character on the deck bemedaled, it was too good to miss. And sadly for Nelson, the marksman shot and wounded him grievously. Nelson fell to the deck. And this is really the point in the battle where we've decided to depict with a little six-figure set for great moments in time, showing Nelson on the deck, and supporting him is Captain Hardy. And this is based on several reports that I've read of the battle and even paintings that I viewed when we were preparing this. One of the ship's surgeons is also next to Nelson, and over the right-hand shoulder of Captain Hardy is a Royal Marine officer standing protectively. Behind him is a young midshipman who's obviously shouting for assistance. And over on the other side here is a typical matelot, a sailor who's rushed over to help. So this is a great little six-figure set. You'll get a closer look at it later on. I think it's really nice. I mean, I've seen many figures of Nelson, and we've done a couple ourselves, but I've never seen any that show the moment after he'd just been hit. So he'd not been taken below decks, where he was later taken, or shortly thereafter, and where he died a short time later. But this is the point where he's still conscious. He's actually talking to Hardy, and the surgeon is tending him. Now, in addition to the little six-figure, that'll be a special boxed figure set. And by the way, this little backdrop that you see here is a pop-up backdrop. This actually comes with the six-figure set. It's included in the box. But over on the other side of this image here, and by the way, let me say, this classic image here was an illustration I found online of the quarter deck of HMS Victory, showing basically the spot where Nelson fell. And we've tried to match this up here. So, but on this other side is two more Royal Marines who again are trying to shoot out the marksmen that are up on the rigging of the French and Spanish ships. And the chap in the centre is a young midshipman called John Pollard, who by many sources claim he was the man that shot the marksman and killed the marksman who had shot Nelson. So we've got midshipman Pollard in the centre, flanked by two Royal Marines. One's reloading and the other's taking a pot shot at someone else. So that's our great moments in time. The code is GMT001, GMT002, 3-figure set, 6-figure set. I hope you like them. Now, mentioned earlier the thing about the Latin motto, so that leads quite nicely into when they actually spoke Latin for real in the time of ancient Rome, and we've got a whole raft of new figures for Streets of Ancient Rome. Some really nice little figures. Let me just go through them with you. Right here we've got a master butcher. Now we've already done the butcher's table with a butcher standing next to it, but when I saw this one, it gave me the idea to add one more. So we've got the master butcher here who looks as if he's cutting off a leg of pork. So he's got his little table, he's got his axe, and he's hard at work there. Now, right next to him is a couple of hunters who are obviously bringing some fresh meat to the butcher. Now, the fresh meat that you can see is actually a wild boar. There was, in the time of ancient Rome, there was lots of forests all around Rome itself, and wild boar were very prevalent. And it was one of the favourite pastimes of people to go out and kill a wild boar, either for themselves or to sell it to the nearest butcher. Well, these two young lads have obviously decided to make some money, so they're bringing a wild boar into the butcher shop. And also with this set is a great little hunting dog who's slavering at the chops, obviously hoping that he'll get a little bite of that boar somewhere. So that's our wild boar hunter set plus dog. To the left of them is a great little set here, which is the potter. And this was, or a pottery maker. And in those days, obviously, everybody needed all kinds of pots to keep food in, to keep wine, to keep water. People were constantly breaking them and you constantly needed more. So guys like a potter were kept very, very busy producing all kinds of sizes of pots for all kinds of different uses. So we've got that little set here. Right in front here is a very nice little set. We're calling that the mosaic maker. Now, if you're fortunate to visit places like Pompeii, which is just outside Naples, and visit the ruins of Pompeii, one of the things you'll be surprised and delighted to see is all kinds of mosaics. Mosaics were made with little pieces of coloured stone or tile or glass even, and artists would combine these to make all kinds of images. It might even be a floor, it might be a wall hanging, it could even be a sign that would go up outside the shop. So again, constant need for that kind of craftsmanship and those skills. So that's another little set here. And if you look again closely, when you see the close-up, you'll see he's got a little box of tools and also all kinds of different shapes and sizes and colours of tiles that he'll incorporate into the mosaic. Behind the mosaic maker, we've got a couple of individual Roman, shall we say, the upper classes. One is a senator and the other is just a member of the nobility, because not every member of the nobility was a senator. But these are both useful figures, and again, showing off different aspects of life in the Roman street. Now, one of these guys, I think it's the senator, the one with the red edging to his toga, he is looking over here at the monument maker set. Now again, another feature of ancient Rome was, especially for the, shall we say, the upper classes, they had all kinds of villas and palaces, and they were always looking for decorations to decorate the garden or even the interior of their premises. So monument makers were also kept busy. And again, you had to be fairly skilled. In this case, we've got the guy that owns the business, and he's showing off some of his handiwork. And the guy in front is obviously a skilled artist, and he's actually painting the monument as well. So another great little set, ties into Streets of Ancient Rome. And here I'll give a little shout out to our friends at Last Post Miniatures, who produce great Roman buildings. And if you're into Streets of Ancient Rome, you really should try and get some of their buildings. They're incredibly good value. They're very flexible. They fit nicely together. Don't take up a lot of space. So if you only get limited display space, they're perfect for that. So highly recommended. Last Post Miniatures, they're based in Sydney, Australia. So I think if you're in the States, I'm not sure what the tariffs will be from, let's say, Australia to the States, but if nothing else, well worth giving them a call or sending them an email and finding out more. They also do some very, very nice Vietnam era buildings that are useful for our Vietnam series. Now, talking of Australia, this little group here, little odd looking group, last July when I was down in Australia visiting the dealers and collectors there, one of the things I've been thinking about, and they've been suggested to me quite a while back, was to do a figure of Ned Kelly. Ned Kelly was a famous bush ranger. A bush ranger is an Australian term for an outlaw. These guys robbed banks, stole cattle, got up to all kinds of mischief. And Ned Kelly was definitely one wild colonial boy, and he was the most famous. And he was actually relatively young when he took up a life of crime, but again, he came from a poor Irish family that had not exactly immigrated to Australia. They had been transported to Australia, or at least definitely his father had been transported from Ireland to Australia. So there was no love lost between the Kelly family and the forces of law and order. And before very long, Ned came from a family of 8, I think it was, and he was the eldest boy, and he took to a life of crime like a duck to water, and he became famous all around the state of Victoria. And actually, while I was in Melbourne last year, I had the opportunity to go for a little road trip in the state of Victoria, which is where Melbourne is, up to this little town that is dedicated to Ned Kelly. And it was quite amazing, actually. It even showed you the cottage where the family lived, and boy, things were very basic in those days. When you went through the cottage, you realised maybe why he took up a life of crime trying to better himself. But eventually, like all things, the law catches up with you. And it didn't help, of course, that during his career, Ned and his gang, and that included, I think, a couple of his brothers, actually shot and killed 3 policemen, and they attempted to murder another. So to say the forces of law and order had it in for him is no understatement. They were just waiting to catch him. And eventually, in 1880, they found out where he was hiding. I think an informant spilled the beans, and about 40 police officers of different ranks and abilities turned up where Ned was lying low. And there was a bit of a gunfight that went on. And again, what makes Ned or these Australian bushrangers so special? Ned and his gang had people make them special armour. And this was like iron or steel plates, mostly made out of former farming implements, that basically they would have a what would you call it? Just like a medieval suit of armour, but at least it would cover your upper body, a little bit of your lower body down to mid-thigh, and they had these bucket-like helmets that they put on their heads. So they could take a lot of punishment, and most of the weapons of those days were not that powerful, and the bullets would mostly be deflected off this plate armour. So Ned is actually wearing a suit of homemade armour on, but he was also well armed. When he had the gunfight with these coppers that came out looking for him, he carried no less than 3 revolvers, and the gang themselves had a whole host of different guns, shotguns, carbines, but the policemen that are around them are actually state troopers, and they are carrying carbines, and they've also got revolvers. And they look, strangely enough, when you see the photographs of the guys of that period, or illustrations, they looked almost like the Union troopers from the American Civil War. They're all wearing a kind of little kepi, navy blue kepi, and they've all got navy blue jackets. And they've also got, obviously their pistol belts with their revolvers, and they've got the ammunition pouch on the back of their cross belts. So this little set is a 4-figure set, special box, special label, and with Ned and 3 of his opponents. So we'll see how that goes. I hope if it's successful, we might add some more, but we'll see. Anyway, something different if you're looking for something unusual, and let's say a little memento of Australia, or at least one part of Australia. Now, finally, we come to these 4 figures here. Again, we've not done many Viet Cong or NVA, North Vietnamese Army, recently, so we thought, and it's got nothing to do with our Latin reference at the beginning, but we thought it's about time we did a 4-man, or actually it's a 1-woman, 3-man patrol of Viet Cong. And again, they're a pretty well-armed patrol. They've all got AK-47s, and one has got an RPG-7 in addition. But they've got a mixture of kit. 2 of them have got backpacks, and one have got the standard get-up. But you can see they're all wearing, to some extent, some part of this typical black peasant uniform that Vietnamese peasants wore at that time. Great little 4-figure set. Very useful in all kinds of scenarios. You can use them as reinforcements for your North Vietnamese Army regulars, or just maybe reinforcements for your Viet Cong irregulars, but they're available as well. What else can I tell you? Well, one other thing I'd like to just mention was last week we were invited to go up to a hobby fair in Beijing, and this was for all kinds of hobbies, but hobbies that guys like. So it was everything from die-cast cars to some figurines, not many. I only saw one company that was selling figurines. Lots of radio control models, and some amazing, huge, big model tanks. I'm talking about Tiger tanks, King Tiger tanks that were like 6 feet long. Absolutely incredible. But what was even more incredible was the venue, which looked as if it had been built in the time of Stalin and Mao. It was almost Russian, like a Russian cathedral, beautifully done. But the other thing that was really, really exciting was how many people were there. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands. I was told that on the first day alone, the show had 40,000 visitors. Now, we were there all weekend. The show began on the Friday, went on the Saturday, and finished on the Sunday. So we were there for 2 full days. Just unbelievable. And what was great was people were selling things, and virtually everyone I saw had bag loads of all kinds of different products. So that was really good as well. But what was exciting was the enthusiasm of collectors. And the nice thing was, I actually met a whole bunch of King Country collectors who were up at the show, and they were saying, "Oh, Andy, you've got to do this. You've got to come. We want King Country to be there." And well, I'm giving it serious thought, because if you can imagine a show that doesn't just attract a few hundred people, but literally on the first day attracted 40,000 people. On the second day, they actually had to close the doors at, I think it was just after midday. They couldn't let any more people in. They were turning people on, saying, "Come back tomorrow, you'll be able to get in tomorrow, but we're not letting any more people in today." So that was more than 40,000 on the second day. 40,000. But the enthusiasm, the fun, the variety, stunning. Anyway, that's enough of that. That was last week. This is this week. Come May, this is May's releases. I hope you like it. And on that cheerful note, I'll leave you until next month. Cheers.